So a good being only does good. So therefore, it must be the fact that we're in such an exile and things are so tough and so difficult. Okay, it's all for the sake of an ascent afterwards. There's going to be a happy ending. But why did it have to happen this way? It must mean that this is the only way it could happen. That there's no other possible way that the final aliyah could happen. Which is a very powerful idea.
Problematic.
It's one that we can't understand.
Right.
We're not the creator, we're not God, and we didn't set up this system. But we know that it could not have been any other way.
Maybe for us, not for God.
Well, it's not saying, because you could say, what do you mean? That Hashem's limited, he can't do things another way, he's unlimited. Yeah, he's unlimited, but he wants a relationship with us. And we are limited. And for a relationship with limited beings, there's limitations because of our side. Not because of him, because of us.
That's how he made us.
Right, but that's what creation is. Creation is Hashem having a relationship with an other. Any other than Hashem is limited. And a relationship with a limited being has limitations. Hashem is not limited, but if he wants a relationship with us, we are. And so therefore the depth of the relationship can only come out of a yerida, of a descent, and only this descent, the way, as bad as it is, as far as it's gone, as difficult as it is, it couldn't be any other way. It must be that way. Meaning we could have had a lesser painful exile, but that would have related in a lesser deep ending. The relationship at the end would not have been as deep. For it to be as deep as Hashem intends it, to reach there, it has to go this far.
That's why it's long and hard, this one.
Long and hard and extreme.
And far.
Yeah. So, even our animal soul has to agree with this logic. Like, yeah, it makes sense. But the Rebbe says more, Val Yidei, the fifth last line of the paragraph, Val Yidei, his bone nazub, poilim gam b'nefesh bahamis shetiya b'b'nuchsa nefesh. By contemplating this, by actually being misbonen, contemplating deeply on this idea, that Hashem is in control not just of the ascent but of the descent. Hashem is completely good. So therefore every detail of the descent is a part of the ascent and couldn't be any other way. It has to be this way. This, by contemplating this, it achieves a certain peace of mind for the nefesh habahamis, for the animal soul. Because when you realize that this is exactly how it's supposed to be, and it's all somehow good, it's all a part of the coming close to Hashem, when you contemplate that deeply and that becomes your mentality, so then a lot of the disquiet goes away. There's a certain acceptance that comes from it, and a certain you make peace with things. And then, not only is your divine soul not in exile, but even your animal soul is not in exile anymore. Right? We said earlier that the Rebbe said our body went into exile, but not our soul. What do we mean our soul? Our divine soul. Our divine soul is connected to Hashem through mitzvahs. Through contemplating this idea and bringing it down to terms that the nefesh habahamis can understand as well, even our animal soul is not in exile anymore. Even our animal soul is a part of the program, is connected with Hashem, because it realizes, even the animal soul realizes that the whole yerida, the descent, is all part of the aliyah.
But what do you mean it's not in exile? Like it's still on the way to redemption, so it's not there yet.
But
I know it's part of the journey, but it's
as soon as you've figured out what exile is, you're not really in exile. Mentally, you're not in exile anymore.
Maybe it's not a continuous
Because
thing.
what's exile? Exile means disconnect from Hashem. Is our divine soul in exile? We established no. Our divine soul is not in exile. Our divine soul is connected with Hashem. And when we do mitzvahs, we're infinitely, unlimitedly connected with Hashem. That's our divine soul. What about our animal soul? Our animal soul, we would normally say, is disconnected with Hashem, because our animal soul has other interests, is distracted by the physical world. But if we contemplate deeply on the idea that the disconnect itself is a part of the connection, and to the point where that becomes our logic, the way we look at the world, our animal soul is not disconnected anymore. Animal soul understands that this whole disconnection thing is just a part of connection. The descent is a part of an ascent. So then our body is still in exile. Because our body, at the end of the day, there's no revelation. This is not all revealed. We had to contemplate to get to this. When you were in the times of the temple, you didn't have to contemplate. It was right in front of you. God was there. Now you have to contemplate that really Hashem is behind this and He is good. You have to contemplate. So the fact you have to contemplate shows that it's not revealed yet. Our body is in exile. But our divine soul and even our animal soul is not when you reach this level. The Rebbe explains. Third last line. Because when you reach this state, the powers of your animal soul, including your intellect, your logic, are at their highest peak. They're working, functioning with clarity. And when you're in that level, when you're in that space, then you really can understand Torah. To the point where you can actually know what the halacha is, know what Torah is, know what Hashem wants from you, even in exile. We said earlier at the beginning of this paragraph that when we're in exile, we don't understand Torah properly, we don't know what the halacha is, there's confusion. So we said this shows that our neshama is affected by exile. Yeah, but when your nefesh bahamis, your animal soul, has this level of clarity, you can actually understand Torah properly, even in exile. You can know what Hashem wants from you. You can have it clear what your mission is. You know what Hashem wants from you, even when you're in exile, because your nefesh bahamis is not clouded by this feeling of disconnection. Because even your animal soul is in a state of tranquility, of peace. It knows where it is and what it's supposed to be doing. So it only leaves exile to a very external part of ourselves. That our body is still in exile. We still don't see Hashem. But our divine soul, even our animal soul, does. Now, this, the Rebbe recognizes, is a very lofty level.
What of understanding?
Yeah.
And maintaining it all the time.
I mean, I think maybe the Rebbe is describing himself here more than us. To be on a level where your animal soul gets it, your logic gets it, that all, that everything that's going on, everything that's happening, is a part of our ascent to get closer to Hashem, and it's all absolutely good, and there's no real descent as a disconnect, because it's all a part of connecting. To actually realize that, and that becomes your life philosophy and the way you look at the world, mate, that's an extremely high level. That's a level where you're not in exile. You're not in Golus. Just your body's in Golus. So the next paragraph, the Rebbe...
But I mean, it's part of this life is always at least contrasting, good and bad, good experience and a bad experience. So, I mean, if you're at that level where the bad experiences aren't bad, and the good experiences, they're not really good, then
No. It's not saying the good. It's saying the good are good, and the bad is also part of the good. Like it's just a part of a deeper good to get you even higher. So you have to sometimes have what seems bad in order to go deeper. It's like in any human relationship that things are all peaceful and good, and then there's a tension. What's that tension there for? To learn about each other more, to understand better, to deepen the relationship. So is it bad or good? It's good. It feels bad. time, but it's good. So
Then what's bad?
nothing. Nothing, because Hashem is boss of everything, and the nature of a good being is to only do good. So nothing can be bad. By definition, bad. Everything is either it's either revealed good or hidden good. So when you're on the level to actually get that,
Very high level.
so then even your animal soul is not in Golos.
But we're learning it. Why can't we get it?
But I think we can get it.
Learn
We
lots
just
of things.
we get it, but we just always forget.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, you can get something intellectually. Oh, yeah, it makes sense, but it doesn't necessarily become your reality. You haven't internalized it. That's why he says you have to be mizbonin, you have to contemplate this. You can't just learn it and then run away. You have to learn it and then spend some time thinking about it.
So can you put it on the internet?
So how do you
So-
explain Hashem is also in Galus with us? Through Torah learning, we have a bond with Him. Imam Basara, Hashem is also
With our body.
Yeah.
The fact that our body is in exile,
So Hashem.
Hashem still feels that. The fact that we can't see Hashem, that's, exile still happens, but it's not on the level of the soul. So in the next section, the Rebbe recognizes, what if you're not up to this level? So even if you haven't reached this level that we just described, because your mind has not yet absorbed the explanation. You just heard it, you understood it, but you haven't absorbed it, that it's become a part of you. That the descent into this physical world, the lowest of all possible worlds, the lowest place there is, and particularly when we talk about not just being in this world, but being in these last generations before Mashiach, which is within the lowly world, the lowest spiritual state there could possibly be. Yeah. Kimvur b'shas, as it's explained in the Gemara, the end of Tractate Sota, it goes through all the signs that Mashiach is about to come, and it says that it's going to be a time when nobody respects anybody, and people rebel against their parents, and people don't respect wisdom anymore, and chutzpah, there's going to be a lot of chutzpah. It describes how low and how misguided the generations before Mashiach are, which we're in now. But you don't need to quote the Talmud, you can see it with your own eyes, that's where we are. You can see it with your own eyes, look around, this is the time where spiritually we're so far away. So, to say that all this, hirak bishvil aliyah, it's only a part of the ascent to come closer to Hashem. Shalachein eina yirida amitis, and therefore it's not really a descent in the first place. It's really an ascent. Okay, so some of us might not be on the level where we can actually see that. We hear it, we appreciate it, we believe it, but to actually see that this is a step up, that we're actually going up and we're closer to Hashem, not further away, that the world is getting better, not worse, to actually see that, we might not be on that level. To really appreciate that all of the pain and suffering and all the darkness and all this is actually good. Okay, we might not be on the level that we've absorbed that idea. But nevertheless, because you do want and hope and expect to go up and to see the happy ending of the story, that itself means that you're there. So the Rebbe introduces another solution. One level is where you see the Yerida as an aliyah. You see the descent as a part of a step up. And therefore you're not in exile. The exile does not have a hold on you because you get it. You know the secret that the exile is not really bad. It's really for goodness. That's one level. That's a very high level. Not all of us can reach that level where we can look at the things going on in the world and say, this is fantastic. Because it's all bringing the ultimate Mashiach, and it's all a part of the... Not all of us can actually see that. We believe it, but not see it. So if you can't, so then there's another there's another way out, and that is, but you're hoping and expecting and waiting for the happy ending. You may not see logically how is it going to come, but you know and believe it's going to come, and so you know that things are going to be good, and you're waiting for it and expecting it, and you want it to happen. You want Mashiach to come. So, if that's your attitude, even though you don't see the good in the darkness, where you want to be is where you are, and you want to be with Mashiach. You want the world to reach its final purpose. So then it's like you're there. Why? Maamar Baal Shem Tov, because there's a beautiful saying of the Baal Shem Tov, very deep idea. The Baal Shem Tov said, that the place where a person's will and thought is, that's where you are. Meaning, the Baal Shem Tov said that where are you? You are where you want to be, where you think, where your mind is. That's actually where you are. We say on a very superficial level, where are you? You're where your body is. Like, you're sitting in this room, that's where you are. But if you don't want to be here, then you're not here. You're somewhere else. You know, when somebody's sitting in one place, but thinking about where they have to be next, they're there, they're not here. You're not present here. Because where you want to be, where your thoughts are, where you're aiming, that's where you are. That's actually really where you are. Regardless of where your physical presence is, you're where your thoughts are. And so you could be sitting in shul, but you're not really here. You're at work or asleep. Or you could be at work, but you're not really there. Are you really in shul or on the beach? It's where you want to be, where your mind is, where your desire and drive is towards. That's actually where you really are.
Like you say, you will be in your simcha. You think about it, and as if you're present there at the time of the.
So that means that we're able to travel through time and space through our will. Because where you want to be, that's where you really are. So therefore, the Rebbe says, you might be in exile. Let's say you are in exile, and you haven't outsmarted the Golus. You haven't outsmarted it because you still don't see how this is all good. You're not on that level to see how it's all good. So therefore, you're not out of exile that way. Here's another way you can be out of exile, and that is because you don't want to be in exile. You want to be with Mashiach. You want things to be good. You want the end to come already. If you want that, and you think it, and your mind and focus is on that, you're there. You're living that reality.
That explains the time travel concept for the first people. The second people can do that. Second category. And if you're actually living it, you really can go to a different place.
Yeah. Third line. But because there are superficial issues, superficial things that block and conceal this reality, meaning it's hard for us to, we want Mashiach to come. Of course we do. We say that, we think, but there's a lot of distractions to that. Is that on our mind all the time? That we want things to be better, we want the world to reach its culmination. We're struggling to make a living and just survive the exile. So we don't always have it in mind. So because there's all these distracting things, there's a solution. A solution to all the distractions to keep focus is what it says in the Mishnah. That you should not stand up to daven until you have had what's called kovid rosh, which means literally heaviness of the head. It means until you've focused. Don't start davening until you have felt the weight on your head. What does that mean? Tefillah inyan is kashrus. To pray means to connect. Davening, the whole point of davening is to feel a connection with Hashem. The bracket says, and that's what it says. That if only a person could daven all day. That's what it says in the Gemara. If only we could just daven all day. If only we would be connected with Hashem all day like we are during davening. During davening, you have a feeling of connection, so you behave differently during davening. You're in a more holy state. If only we could have that all day, that feeling of connection with Hashem all day, of awareness of His presence all day, we would behave very differently. Then we would know, we'd be aware whom we're standing before. When you're davening, you're standing before Hashem. But when you're sitting at work or going about your daily stuff, you don't feel the presence of Hashem so consciously. If only we could, that would be good, because the whole thing of davening is feeling a connection with Hashem. So, after the bracket, but the preparation for davening, to get into the right mood for davening, you need kovid rosh, this heaviness of the head. Because what that means is that you cancel out all of the distractions, and then you're able to focus on Hashem. That's what kovid rosh means. To stop and to feel Hashem's presence in davening, you first have to have a sense of His closeness. You have to push away all the other thoughts, the flippant and frivolous and mundane thoughts. That has to be like pushed out of your mind, and then you can start davening. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have distracting thoughts when you daven. That does happen, of course. But what it means is you can't just fall into davening. You can't just go from chatting and checking email to davening. Like it doesn't work that way. You have to first stop, clear your mind, have a focus, and then get into the davening. That's what kovid rosh means. To not allow those things to distract. And so we'll continue next time. But what just to connect it to what we're talking about. So for us to feel a connection with Hashem, and therefore a desire for the end of exile, you need to daven. Davening is a time when we connect with Hashem's reality, with the way He looks at things, and we move away from our mundane reality. And so instead of the rest of the day, we're just worried about the immediate problems we have. Like, we've just got to solve this problem at work, or this thing with our family, or whatever's going on in front of us. Like, that's what we're dealing with during the day. We're not thinking about Mashiach to come during the day. We're just waiting for lunch to come, or whatever. We've got more immediate problems. So to get out of that, you need to daven. Davening 3 times a day is the way we move out of that mundane reality and connect to a high reality, and that's when we realize that what we really want is Mashiach to come. What we really want is there should be ultimate peace in the world and spiritual connection and a relationship with Hashem. That's all. That's what we're all really looking for. That you feel that during davening. And how do you get that during davening? By first pushing aside all those mundane things before davening, saying, I'm not thinking about that now. I'll worry about that later. But for now, for the next however long, I'm davening. That's the kovid rosh. That's the focus of the mind, which then allows us to connect with Hashem, and that influences us. That from after we davened till next time we daven, there'll be a residue of that connection. That from now we're just davening shachris until we daven mincha in the afternoon. We've got that connection. We've got at the back of our mind at least is hovering this idea that we want to be connected with Hashem, and that will influence the way we behave and what we do during the day. And then that'll start to dissipate in the afternoon, so we'll need to daven again. And then once night falls, we'll go to daven again. That will maintain that desire. And then, so our focus on the end game will always be maintained. That we're here to bring Mashiach. That's what we're here to do.
Right.